Logan Gilbert's career day and a grand slam Tana helped the Mariners salvage a game from an otherwise nightmarish series down in Anaheim. Will this win successfully stop the bleeding? That and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Mariners move to 81-65 on the year with a 9-1 victory over the Angels. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen after the game. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, consider signing up for our Patreon. The link as well as our social accounts are in the description of the show, wherever you're watching or listening to this. We'll be giving you our takeaways from today's action down in Anaheim and reflect on a brutal weekend overall for the Mariners. But first, Colby, how's it going?
Oh, fine. I guess you'd probably know that if you ever answered your phone, but it's going pretty good. Despite the rough weekend, in particular, a very rough Sunday, sports wise. Things went okay. Today's win is certainly a mood lifter for a couple of reasons. First of all, magic numbers down to 12. So there we go. We know how important 12 is to Seattle. So there's that. Also, the win today officially eliminated the Angels from playoff contention. So while the Mariners may have lost the series and also lost the opportunity to guarantee them a losing season, they did, in fact, put the final nail in the coffin for their playoff hopes, which were basically zero anyways, but whatever, I'll take it. And finally, today was win number 81, which means the Mariners will finish at least 500, and obviously they'll finish above 500. And this will be the first time since 2002 and 2003 that the Seattle Mariners will have finished as a 500 team or better in back-to-back seasons. Yeah, I believe it's only the third time it's happened in franchise history.
Wow.
So not a fun stat, really. You like that to be a pretty common occurrence, but it is worth noting. And today's win accomplished all three of those things. So not too bad for a Monday afternoon matinee.
And on top of that, we saw a career day from Logan Gilbert, who struck out a career high 11 Angels hitters. And we saw Carlos Santana hit a grand salami to break things wide open, 5-0. And then eventually it became 8-1 off of a 3-run home run from Ty France, who had a pretty nice day at the plate overall. He also had a hard hit ball that ended up being a line out with a runner on third back when it was just 1-0. That was pretty frustrating because I came right after an awful Mitch Haniger at bat. Haniger finally got off the schneid with a hit today, which ended, I believe, in 0 for his last 20. He also walked once. But we saw, J.P. Crawford got a couple of hits, including a triple. So, big day for the offense overall. Let's start with Gilbert, though. Gilbert's just been red hot in September, and he continued that today. What did you see out of him?
Yeah, just pretty much total domination. It helps that Mike Trout's not in the lineup. Obviously, that'll help anybody. But, Mike Trout Jr., a.k.a. Luis Rengifo, was in the lineup. And Gilbert handled him just fine.
Even guy, man. We'll talk about him later, but geez.
I mean, the Mariners should trade for him and then just put him in AAA. No, it's one of those. We'll talk about him later. But no, Gilbert was really good today. Even the one run he gave up, I don't want to say it was fluky because it was good contact against him. But Dylan Moore couldn't hold on to a ball that I think Julio catches. And it's not a shot at Demo. He's just not a center fielder, and it was a tough play anyway. So I don't want to say the one run was fluky, but definitely aided by, just kind of a weird play overall. So it was just pretty much dominant from start to finish. Really, aside from the 12 pitch at bat he had in the first inning against Ohtani, which he struck Ohtani out on, he cruised through 6 and it's good. Logan's been on a nice run here in September, just like he was last September. It's funny how much, Gilbert's 2021 and 2022 are starting to mirror each other. Just god awful in August, and then in September making a legitimate case that he's the ace of this staff. So it's just one of those things. It's a good problem to have. If you're the Mariners right now, you have four guys who they go out there on a nightly basis. You feel really good about your chances to win. And Gilbert is on one of those runs right now. So, I actually saw some good breaking stuff today, some good off speed stuff. He threw it for strikes too, which obviously opens up the zone for his fastball up in the strike zone, which is his bread and butter anyway. So it was just kind of a total package from Gilbert today. Threw a lot of strikes. So it's about as good as we've seen Gilbert in a long, long time.
So let me ask you this. We've talked about a 3-game playoff series.
He's number 4.
Still.
He's number 4. There is nothing he can do.
Even with Ray's struggles?
There is nothing he can do to crack the top. No, because you're not going to not give the ball to Robbie Ray or Luis Castillo. You're not going to do that. So there's one spot, Kirby or Gilbert. Kirby's been better, period. Kirby has been, since like June 1, Kirby has been the best pitcher in the American League by F4. And as good as Logan has been recently, he's still not a great matchup for a lot of these playoff teams. It's a pretty good matchup against Tampa, but he's a terrible matchup against Toronto. We know that. He's not a great matchup against Cleveland either, who makes a ton of contact. So yeah, he's not a super favorable matchup for any of those teams in the playoffs. So no, it's Ray, it's Castillo, it's Kirby to me, and it's pretty easy set there. Now you might not get that opportunity. You might be in a position where you have to start Logan Gilbert, and if that's the case, fine. Then you feel really good about it still. But to me, if you do get the option to line up your rotation however you want, and I believe it was Churchill, he kind of plotted out the rest of the rotation going forward. And the last day of the regular season would be started by Luis Castillo. So if the Mariners have everything clinched that they want clinched by that point, they might just use flexing that day, and then they can set up their rotation literally Castillo, Ray, however they want. So we'll see how the rotation ends up stacking up at the end of it. And if you have to use Ray, or if you have to use Gilbert to start one of those 3 games, at least he's pitching well enough right now that you feel really good about it. But still, to me, he's clearly number 4.
By the way, magic number might be going down to 11 tonight. Tigers up 2-0 over the Orioles. Bases loaded, no outs in the 4th inning right now. So
it's early and Detroit stinks, so we'll see. But
it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Baltimore not playing good baseball right now.
Yeah, they're tailing off. Did not have a good series in Toronto. Was able to salvage a game
expected.
there, but yeah, and it's starting to become where maybe you got to look at the White Sox more than the Orioles, but even then they're 5 games out. Orioles are technically 5 games out because of the tiebreaker. There's just, also the Orioles still have to play the Astros for 3.
Right.
I think maybe they have another series against the Rays or someone like that as well on top of that. So they,
Right.
There's even with what happened this past weekend, you still took 3 games off of your magic number.
Maybe 4
today. And look, you lost a little bit of ground on the wild card 1. I think you can make that up though. I think you'll be able to, and as guys get healthier, as guys start to get, return back to the lineup, hopefully, seems like Cal Raleigh back Wednesday. But please stop sliding into first base, by the way. Let's just get that out of the way here. And then Julio, maybe tomorrow, we'll see. But, they should play the long game here. They should, if it was up to me, just give those guys as many days as they need, because you should, in theory, be able to survive against the A's. Obviously, that didn't necessarily ring true in Anaheim. One of those games, though, you had to face Shohei Ohtani. But still, you should be able to at least win a couple games in Oakland, even without those guys.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, once again. Real quick, let me ask you, with Gino now on the IL, and we'll talk about that and how that impacts the team in a little bit, but with him now on the IL and the way that Santana's playing, or the way that Santana's hitting, is he the second best hitter, Santana, on the Mariners right now behind Julio?
Over the last 2 weeks, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just currently, like right now, just going hot hand. Like,
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
It's pretty much all home runs, right?
Mhm.
And like I'm not here to complain about a guy who only hits home runs. Obviously, that's great. But it's kind of unpredictable, although it seems pretty predictable right now. But yeah, you just kind of ride the hot hand, and what's interesting is before Divish and Dreyer got on their high horse about a clearly bothering wrist of Ty France. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. Um, they had mentioned the possibility, and Divish even flat out said that he kind of expects to see Ty France play third base tomorrow, which I mean, I guess so Santana can play first, but then who you DHing? Like, what? I don't understand. Like I said, we'll probably talk about all this later.
Winker should be
Against a lefty.
DH'd.
Ugh, I don't
I
know.
mean, he's
But
been better against lefties than righties this year, so
it's not saying much lately.
I
Not saying much lately.
I know, but like,
But yeah, we'll see how they decide to go with that. It's like, I think you'd only make that move if maybe you were calling up Luis Torrens
Kyle Lewis.
or Kyle Lewis, somebody who might hit against lefties. So we'll see. We'll see. We do know Torrens is with the team, just in case Cal, who should be on the IL, but probably won't be, can't go. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, Santana's probably your second best hitter right now, and that's terrifying. That is not a good place to be. So fingers crossed that today was the start of a Ty France breakout and not just an isolated game where he happened to hit some bad pitching.
But I'll say this. To survive these injuries, to survive what's kind of going on right now, you needed something like this to happen, something kind of unexpected, like a Carlos Santana breakout. So this is nice. This is certainly welcome. Hopefully that continues because they're going to need it, especially if this isn't a sign of a breakout. Things kind of turn in the right corner here for Ty France, because right now Mitch Haniger isn't really hitting. Hopefully he broke out of his slump with the single today and the walk, but who knows?
Oh yeah, I feel good about that.
Yeah. That's been rough to watch. I mean, who knows what Cal's going to be like with a busted up finger? Like, who knows what Gino's going to be like when he comes back? Because apparently he's only going to be able to DH when he comes back. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder: this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen after the game. So, where do the Mariners go from here now with Gino being hurt? Because it's a fracture in his finger on his right throwing hand. It's the index finger, I believe, right? Fractured index finger. That doesn't sound like something that's going to allow him to play third base again this year. So Gino's going to have to be your DH full time whenever he comes back. And like I said, who knows how that's going to impact him offensively. So, for me, like, obviously you hope that he comes back and he's at least like 80% of what he was pre-injury. But to me, you can't really count on getting anything out of Gino, because with a hand injury like that, offensively, that's going to be very hard for him to produce, because that's going to be a lot of pain. Even if they have it covered up and all that good stuff, there's still going to be pain that's associated with that, that's associated with the swing, pain that's associated with contact. That's going to be a difficult injury for him to play through. Seems like he's going to try it. Seems like he might end up being back once his IL stint ends, but who's got to step up here, Colby? And what do the Mariners do at third base? Can Ty France actually be a long-term option, or are you just going to have to roll with Abraham Toro, Dylan Moore, Jake Lamb playing every single day?
It's probably that second part. Ty France can't play third base. We've been over this before. Can you hide him over there for a game or two? Sure. Do you want to play in there in a playoff series? Absolutely not. And there's no reason to, because you can still play him at first base and Santana can DH. So it's not really an issue. Now, when Gino comes back, then things kind of get difficult because now Santana obviously can't DH. Gino has to. So in the absence, it seems pretty easy to me that I would just roll with unfortunately, Dylan Moore, Abraham Toro, Jake Lamb, that crew. And Moore would be fine against left-handed pitching. You just don't really have Lamb is supposed to be the guy against right-handed pitching, but he hasn't performed that well, and the Mariners really haven't given him much opportunity to. So it feels kind of weird what their plan is there. Jonathan VR, I know he's not eligible for the playoff roster, but he's a veteran who's played plenty of third base and is probably a better option than Abraham Toro right now. So I'm a little bit surprised they didn't even consider him. Same goes for Mason McCoy. So we'll see. But for now, I think it's probably going to be more Lamb and Toro for the time being. Gino went to go see a hand specialist today, so hopefully we'll have more information on his the rest of the season, what he might be able to do and what he might not here in the next few days. So we'll see how that works. But yeah, I think that's what it is. And then when you get into the playoffs, you're going to have to find a way to be creative. And maybe that means Carlos Santana doesn't play every day, which, I mean, to me is fine. But if he's swinging this hot of a bat, you probably want to try and find a way to get him in there. And the only way you can do that, I think, is to put Ty France at third base. So you're kind of playing this difficult juggling act game where you're a run prevention defense. You're a run prevention, pitching and defense team. But your two of your best hitters right now, two of your hottest hitters right now, or three of them, basically only have two spots to play. So you're kind of doing this weird juggling act thing. It's going to be interesting to see how the Mariners handle it. I could see them possibly being kind of aggressive with Ty France over at third base, just to kind of try and get him the reps. And then just, because they have a lead here, they can kind of live with any mistakes he makes. But that's asking a lot for France, who's still trying to figure things out at the plate too, to change positions and play a spot that he hasn't taken any reps at all year. That's asking so much from the guy. And obviously Santana can't do it, and Gino can't throw, then he can't play anywhere else. So you're just kind of in a rough spot here. Toro, just not the guy. He's not going to turn it around this year. We know that. Dylan Moore, we know, has his own issues, particularly, against right-handed pitching. So you're kind of stuck, and you just kind of try and make the best of it. And so really the best case scenario is that Gino comes back in 10 days and he's able to play third base in some capacity by the time the playoffs roll around. But once he's ready to go, assuming he is ever ready to go, then I think you're just going to have to, for the most part, particularly certainly against left-handed pitching, you're going to want Carlos Santana, Eugenio Suarez, and Ty France in the lineup. And the only way you can accommodate that is for Ty France to play third. So you're kind of in a tight spot right now. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of the team the Mariners built at the deadline. They didn't want to go out and get that maybe a little bit more expensive Brandon Drury type who can play third base. They decided to go cheap with it, or not cheap. Yeah, we'll call it cheap. Why not?
Be careful with that word, Colby. Be careful with that word. They
decided to go into the great value bin at Walmart instead of maybe, seeing what was behind the glass case. And, you can kind of understand why. Gino's not a guy who's missed a ton of time before, but, it happens. This stuff happens, and it's unfortunate, but it's just the reality. I think Ty France starting third baseman is going to be a thing in the playoffs. And
yeah,
thankfully the Mariners don't have a ton of ground ball guys. No.
Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't have done better than Jake Lamb, huh? All right.
Did you want to give up Gabriel Gonzalez for Brandon Drury?
I'm not even asking that. I wasn't even asking
now.
For that either. I wasn't even asking
right now, all things considered.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you watched Adam Frazier play for the last three? Thank goodness Adam Frazier had that really hot July, because it convinced Jerry DiPoto that the Mariners didn't need to add an infielder at the deadline. Thank God. And that worked out great, because now Adam Frazier's WRC plus since the deadline is 68. So, wow. Awesome.
68. So close.
Thank goodness for that one great month he had out of his last 10. Woo. Oh, man. Otherwise, we might be saddled with Brandon Drury.
Yeah. How does this affect your confidence levels, Colby? How does this obviously they're going to make the playoffs. Like, that's not in question. But does this affect your expectations, your confidence levels for how they could perform in the postseason?
Yeah, I have to see how Gino looks, when he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mariners have been pretty clear about this, that he will come back, and it just a matter of whether or not he'll be able to play third. That hurts, obviously, because now the DH has to be Gino, which means you have to play Ty France at third, and you have to play Santana and that's less than ideal. So it certainly hurts. It also doesn't help that, Cal Raleigh right now has a hand injury as well. We know how hand injuries typically affect power, and obviously the thumb, pretty important to the hand. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see if the Mariners put him on the IL or not, or they just kind of try and force him to play through 60% health. I think we know which way they're going to go with that. So, and then Julio's back. We'll see. Like, they say he's going to play tomorrow. They said he's feeling better every day, but again, back injury, like stiff back for a 21-year-old power hitter. I just has so much torque in his swing. Like, I don't know. That one's got me a little concerned too. And then Mitch Haniger is just an absolute dumpster fire at the plate right now, so I can't trust him at all. So yeah, I'm a little bit more concerned than I was pre-Gino breaking his finger. I think you have to be. So, it's a great time for somebody to step up. I would like to say Jesse Winker, but I've fallen for that trap too many times. So yeah, somebody needs to step up. Right now it's Santana. And thank goodness somebody at least is doing that, but it's gonna have to be somebody else, because you can't rely on Cal right now. You can't rely on Mitch. You can't rely on, obviously, Gino. I still think you can more or less rely on Julio, but there's still question marks there. So for various reasons, all these guys who have carried you at certain points of the year might not be able to, which means you need somebody else to step up, and really you need a couple somebodies, because I just named all the stars of the Seattle Mariners and there's no more left. So, somebody's else has got to step up. Somebody's got to help Carlos out. And you got to hope Carlos stays this hot for a long time. But yeah, I am a little bit more concerned than I was over the weekend.
Well, yeah, and I'm really concerned too, because defensively speaking, not only is it third base that gets messed up here, it means that you can't DH Jesse Winker. And we know that they're not going to bench Jesse Winker. So that means that Jesse is going to play in left field, which I wouldn't do that. I would just bench him, because you're not getting enough offensively out of Jesse Winker right now that outweighs how absolutely putrid he is in the field. So
playoff games are typically low scoring.
So not only are you going to have potentially Ty France at third base, you're also going to have Jesse Winker in left field.
You're also going to have Carlos Santana at first base instead of Ty France.
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary. Like, that's incredibly scary. For going into a postseason series with pitchers that do give up quite a bit of contact, balls are going to be put in play. These guys are going to be tested. The ball is going to find Jesse Winker. The ball is going to find Ty France. And that could be the difference right there. That could be the difference between advancing the playoffs and not. That could be the difference between, being one and done in the wild card round and going to the ALDS, going to the ALCS. Like, that's what I think the ceiling is for this team, is still, championship series. But if that's how their defense is going to be aligned, they're going to need a lot of good luck.
Yep.
Like they're gonna, like, the BABIP gods are gonna have to be so on their side in those whole series, like, because it just on paper it doesn't add up. It doesn't equate to success on paper.
No,
it doesn't at all.
That's part of the reason why in the wild card round maybe you don't start Logan Gilbert, because Gilbert is gives up a lot of hard contact. It's part of his game. He always will. And at least with Kirby, that's something he can avoid. It's in his tool bag to avoid that because of his control. So we'll see. It's again, the Mariners, we said this in July, early August, it feels like they're a bat short of where they needed to be. And we were counting Mitch Haniger in that equation. Mitch Haniger being as bad as he has been lately, you're 2 bats short and you didn't get him. So it's just one of those issues where, we'll see. Obviously, there's no turning back. You have what you have. And, obviously, the prime goal is to end the drought, and they're going to do that. So at the end of the day, the season is a success if they go 0-2 in the playoffs and bounce. Like, big picture, it's a success, but it just felt like they left some wins on the table. And part of that is bad luck. Part of that is poor planning, and it potentially some part of that is ownership group not quite believing in this team as much as maybe they should. We don't know what the mix is of that, like the blame chart or whatever, but we also don't know that it's going to come into play, because for all we know, Julio turns into playoff Randy, and he wills the team to the World Series. He's kind of was doing it before he hurt his back. So it's one of those things that the playoffs are weird, man. You get in, you have a shot, weird things happen. And the Mariners are kind of the kings of weird things happening that benefit them. So we'll see how it goes. But ultimately, I feel like, the confidence that they're going to make the playoffs is still a 10 for me. I'd be
it's an
absolutely
11
shocked. Yeah. It's just, the magic number is 12. If they win 6 games and Baltimore loses 6 games out of their next 16, it's over. So yeah, it's just one of those things. I feel pretty good about it. As far as like reaching their ceiling, took a pretty sizable hit this weekend, and it's mostly due to the injuries, not so much the bad series against the Angels.
Yeah. So looks like the Tigers are well on their way to making this 11 on the magic number for the Mariners. We'll see if they can hang on. It's obviously the Tigers, but 6
What's
zip.
the score?
6 zip in the bottom of the 4th. So
at this point, I might be more concerned about the White Sox. The Orioles are just fading fast.
Yeah, the White Sox still, though, like, they have to play Cleveland, they have to play Minnesota. Like, obviously Minnesota's not great, but like they can win some games. Like,
the by the way, the huge 3-game series I think starts this weekend. I think it is. It's Chicago versus Cleveland. If you're a Mariners fan, you're rooting for Cleveland in all 3 of those.
Yeah, they're also playing each other starting tomorrow. And,
maybe that's it.
McKenzie and Bieber are going for the Guardians. So
their top 3 are all going on both sides. So basically, the White Sox need to sweep Cleveland to have a shot at the division. And they're only a game behind Baltimore right now. So, but again, for the Mariners' sake, the magic number is still the same. So, well, it's 1 less because Chicago has a tiebreaker. But that's it. I still feel really good that they're going to make the playoffs. So
I feel like this win today, though, for the Mariners kind of stopped the snowball effect, because it's like you get swept by the Angels, and then it's like, all right, you're still in a really good spot, but vibes are kind of down. Guys are hurt. Like,
right, you're still.
You start to get a little bit in your head there if that happens, So I'm glad that they won this game, and in convincing fashion, where they just absolutely trashed the Angels. And it's like, okay, let's reset now. Let's go into Oakland. We got Luis on the bump tomorrow. Like, we're good.
Really want to win tomorrow.
Yeah, really.
Because then you can start to snowball it the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if this team puts together a 4 or 5 game winning streak, it's over. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that's going to stop them is losing 7 out of 8. And so, they got the win today. They're still, they went 3-3 over the last 6, 3-4 over the last 7, whatever it is, which is still going to be fine. It's still going to get you there. It's just unfortunate that you lost ground for hosting, but you still have a shot, because Tampa and Toronto play each other quite a bit down the stretch here. And if you can get healthy and you can start playing well, you can still snag that number 1 wild card spot. But getting in the playoffs, it's going to happen.
And by the way, I mean, this kind of worked out in the end, because now it's even looking likelier that the Mariners are going to clinch at home.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I'd
rather clinch home playoff games, but
I mean, they'll still have a good shot at doing that, like you mentioned. Like I'm still pretty confident that they're going to get the wild card one. I would say that my confidence level is like at an 8, maybe even a 9 on that still.
I don't know. 2 games back with 16 to go.
I think they're fine, especially with those schedules, with those team schedules. I think
they have to jump Tampa and Toronto, and they have to clear Tampa by a full game.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
I think I don't think that's out of the
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't think I would say that it's likely at this stage, but we'll see. We could be singing a different tune by Friday. So,
and also if they get the 6th seed, I mean, they play the Central winner, which that's probably the most favorable matchup of them all.
It's better than the 5. It's better than the 5, but it's still Bieber, McKenzie, probably Quantrill would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's no easy picnic, and you're playing all those games, halfway across the country, and then some weird stuff can go down, but certainly better than going to Toronto or Tampa.
Yes. But yeah, so the path to clinching at home is a little bit clearer, and the path to clinching wildcard 1 still there. Still certainly there. Just got to keep on winning games, get healthier here, and enjoy the ride. It's going to be fun, folks. We're past this Angel series. Let's reset. Let's regroup. Let's get re-energized here, and we're on to Oakland. So with that, that's going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Locked On Mariners. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. That's DaneGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the game. Now make your second listen. The Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.